وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم ذكرنا ما نسينا وعلمنا ما جهلنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من حال أهل النار لله تعالى. I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without being obligated. And I ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to protect His Muslim nation. I testify no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one in the universe, and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and He is not attributed with fatigue like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to Him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. And whoever attributes an attribute of the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and His final prophet and messenger sent to all humans and jinn. And He is truthful about everything He conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise would be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, we are grateful to Allah that we have been guided to Islam, because Islam is the only accepted religion to Allah. Islam is the only valid religion. Islam is the only true religion. And we can prove this using the rational evidence with the objective evidence, with the rational evidence, and with what is explicitly mentioned in the Quran, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allahi al-Islam, which means indeed the accepted religion to Allah is al-Islam. And in another ayah, وَمَن يَبْتَغِ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَن يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Which means, and whoever seeks a religion other than al-Islam, it will never be accepted from him, and in the hereafter he will be among the losers. So this ayah also is explicit in showing and telling that the only accepted religion to Allah is al-Islam. So we are grateful for that, we are thankful for that, and we also are grateful and thankful to Allah that we have been guided to have access to the knowledge of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah, which is the saved group. So in order for the Muslim to walk on the straight path, as-siratul mustaqim, he has to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the only way to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to have the knowledge that he came with, to implement the knowledge that he came with. And the only way to get the knowledge that he came with is through the chains of acquisition, through the connected chains leading back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yani for us living in these times. So we're grateful and thankful to Allah that we have that. We have been blessed with that. Especially nowadays in this time of confusion and chaos, where there are people who they look like us and they talk like us, but they are callers to the gates of hell. Whoever answers them will be pushed into hell by them. So it's a very dangerous situation, very serious situation. It's not a light matter, as some ignorant people who don't take this matter as serious as they should. It's not a light matter as some of these people think. Rather, it's something that we require our utmost care to protect ourselves from the corruption and from the deviance. And the only way to do that, of course, is with the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So we're going to continue on with our subject matter, the explanation of Matan Abi Shujā, which is a beginner's book in the Shafi'i school of Islamic law, which any Muslim who is formally studying Islamic studies, if he is studying the Shafi'i school, he will definitely take this book. It is widespread throughout the world. The author was a righteous, pious Muslim, and he was a mujtahid, and he had a lot of knowledge, and he was a judge. So we reached to page 166, Invalidators of the Prayer. We're going to read the matan, and then we'll read the explanation. The matan is everything over the line. The author said, 11 things invalidate the prayer: intentional talking, lots of motion, ritual impurity, the occurrence of najas filth, exposure of the unlawful nakedness, changing the intention, turning the back to the qibla, eating, drinking, laughing, and apostasy. وَالْحِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى مِنْ ذَلِكَ. We seek refuge with Allah Ta'ala from the abhorrent sin of apostasy. Below the line, the author said, among the invalidators of the prayer is to speak on purpose with the speech of people that is not part of the prayer. Footnote 235, the author mentioned 11 matters that invalidate the prayer, but in reality, there are more than 11. The author counted eating and drinking as 2 different matters, while in other copies of the book, they count 10 matters that invalidate the prayer, because both eating and drinking are considered as one matter. So that's just a difference in the number consideration. The author said, 236, footnote 236, there are restrictions here to what is meant by speech, kalam. Intentional kalam, so the unintentional kalam is excluded. Another restriction is that one is remembering that he is in prayer, because if one forgot that he is praying, in this situation there are 2 cases. If the kalam is considered little, that is 6 meaningful sentences or less, such as saying, go to the market, this is 1 sentence, bring me bread, this is 1 sentence, and one forgot that he was praying and he spoke with little kalam, this does not invalidate the prayer. However, if it was a lot of kalam while forgetting that he was praying, it invalidates the prayer. Another restriction is for one to know of the judgment that it is forbidden to speak with the kalam of people while praying. So if one did not know that it is forbidden while praying and one did this, one's prayer will not be invalidated. Another invalidator of the prayer is moving a lot. I skipped. Okay, so we mentioned those 3 things. So if the person speaks the speech of people while remembering that he's praying, immediately his prayer is invalid. If he speaks the speech of people while forgetting that he's praying, then in this case, we check. Did he speak a lot of words? Did he speak more than 6 sentences or more of the normal speech of people, or did he speak less than that? So an example of the sentences that we're talking about is like, bring me bread. This is one sentence. Go to the market. This is another sentence. So if the person, that count is only 2. So if the person, he forgot that he was praying and he spoke only those 2 sentences, then what happens in this case? His prayer is still valid because he said that those 2 sentences and is considered a little amount of speech, and so that is that's the definition of little. The definition of little is less than those 6 sentences. So for us, if the person forgets and it was only a small amount of the prayer, it was only a small amount of speech, meaning less than 6 sentences like the ones that we mentioned, then in that case, it's considered to be that it's a little speech, and so his prayer would not be invalid because he was forgetting. So that's the condition for when the person is forgetting. That's a condition for when we talk about the speech, that it's an invalidator of the prayer. And that means if the person was remembering that he's in the prayer. But if he was forgetting, and if it was a little, and we defined what little is, then his prayer is still valid. And the third thing is that he knows the judgment, that it is forbidden to speak with the speech of people while praying. So if one did not know that it is forbidden while praying, and one did this, one's prayer is not invalidated. So in this case here, ignorance, the fact that he was ignorant about that judgment, the fact that he did not know that if he speaks the speech of people while in the prayer, that it invalidates his prayer, the fact that he did not know that, in this case, it does not invalidate the prayer. Back to the explanation. He says, uttering even 2 letters or 1 meaningful letter, in this case, invalidates the prayer, whether there was a human being there or not, unless one forgets that he is praying and what he says is considered little. Likewise, the person who did not know that it is sinful to speak with the speech of people while praying, his prayer is not invalidated. For example, if a person who newly embraced Islam spoke while praying, not knowing that it is sinful to speak with the people's speech that does not pertain to the prayer while praying, in this case his prayer is still valid. Another invalidator of the prayer is moving a lot. Footnote 237, there is another saying that if the movements add up to the length of 1 rak'ah, that this would then invalidate the prayer. And that's actually the saying that is more in line with the confirmed evidence. The scholars had different opinions about what is considered a lot of movement. The famous saying among the Shafi'is is that 3 consecutive movements are considered a lot of movement, whether these movements occur with 1 organ or with 3 different organs of the body. Likewise, if someone moves 3 of his organs at the same time, this invalidates his prayer. And one of the teachers, he modeled what that looks like. So I can't do it like he did it, but basically you move both of your hands and your head. So I can't exactly show how that is. On the other hand, moving the fingers while the palm of the hand is not in motion does not affect the prayer. Also, moving the eyelids or moving the lips does not affect the validity of the prayer. So there's certain movements in the prayer that are called invalidating movements. Meaning that if you continuously did those movements for that period of time, or 3 consecutive ones, the Shafi'is consider that to be invalidating the prayer. But there's certain movements that are not considered like that. For example, like what? Like the eyelids, like moving the eyelids. If someone can move his ear, if he's able to move his ear, and I don't know how some people. The eyelids, not the eyebrows. Never heard about the eyebrows, sorry. But the ears, if someone can move their ear, it doesn't invalidate. If someone moves their eyelids, it doesn't invalidate. If someone has their palm steady and they move their finger, that doesn't invalidate. If someone moves their lips, that doesn't invalidate. If someone moves their tongue, that doesn't invalidate. So those are considered movements, yes, but they're not the type of movements that would invalidate. So if someone did move their finger consecutively without their palm moving, that doesn't invalidate the prayer. And if they did it continuously, it would not invalidate the prayer.
So for example, when you're teaching them sometimes, and then you tell them, like, you instruct them, they might like speak. So this does not invalidate.
While they're praying, yeah. If they weren't aware that it's haram to speak or forbidden to speak with the speech of people during the prayer, then they're not. Their prayer is not invalidated. The author said, ritual impurity invalidates the prayer, whether it is the major ritual impurity or the minor ritual impurity, and whether it occurs intentionally or unintentionally. So if someone breaks their wudu while they're praying, immediately their prayer is invalid, whether that happened by accident or on purpose. Also, what invalidates the prayer is for najis filth to come in contact with the one who is praying. This means if unexempted najis filth comes in contact with the body of the person praying or his clothes, this invalidates his prayer. However, if the unexempted najis filth that comes in contact with one's clothes is dry, and one immediately gets rid of it without carrying it, and without one's hand coming in contact with it, in this case, one's prayer is not invalidated. And also, without being judged that the person is carrying it. So, the reason that they mentioned the dry najis filth is because that's a scenario that is likely to occur, or likely for the person to be able to stop the unexempted najis filth from getting on his body, because when the thing is dry, the person is able to, let's say, if it's on his shoulder, he's able to lean, and the thing falls off his shoulder. Or if it was on his head, let's say it landed on his head, he's able to move his head, and it slides off of him, and there would be no residue on his body or on his clothes of that filth because it's dry. So this is a highly probable scenario where the person, he can still keep his prayer intact, even if that unexempted dry filth fell on him. But the judgment applies as well if the unexempted filth was wet, and somehow the person who was praying, the Muslim who was praying, is able to get that unexempted wet filth off of them without there being any trace remaining on their body. So what's one way that this can be pictured? Surprise question to the audience.
Or if it like falls on their shawl and they just...
So yes, that's correct. An example is if they're praying, and let's say they were praying outside, and they had a shawl, which is like like a kufiya, but instead of putting it on your head, you have it draped over your shoulders. And so let's say a pigeon was flying above, and the pigeon is, these are real animals, they're not robots. But anyway, the pigeon, some people think that it's important to warn against that. Some people, it's one of those very strange things. But so if the pigeon was flying overhead and it dropped some pigeon droppings, and let's say it landed on the shawl, if somehow the Muslim who was praying, he can get that shawl off of his shoulders without carrying it, without like picking it up and carrying it, and without like him considered to be carrying it, and without that like staining something that he can't take off, and it comes off right away, then his prayer would still be valid. If not, then his prayer is invalidated through no fault of his own. He wouldn't be sinful. He just has to start his prayer all over again after he clears that unexempted filth from himself. The author said, likewise, if the person praying uncovers his awrah, unlawful nakedness, intentionally, then immediately his prayer is invalidated. If, however, the wind uncovers his awrah and he immediately covers it, his prayer is not invalidated. But if he does not cover it immediately, that is, he waits and then covers it, his prayer is invalidated. So here, this is actually a judgment that many Muslims, they don't pay attention to it as they should, and both males and females. So for the brothers, sometimes the brothers, they wear the thobe that the collar is very wide. So like, for example, like a Moroccan thobe. Let's say they're wearing a Moroccan thobe and the neck is really wide, and let's say that they just put that on and nothing, they don't have anything underneath, and then they're praying, and so they bow, they make ruku', but when they make ruku', the collar dangles. So because it's so wide, the collar of their thobe, it dangles like away from their chest. So if someone, let's say we're standing in front of them, they could technically see to where their awrah is. And so that would invalidate the prayer, because the awrah of that person will become uncovered. Also, like, let's say if the brother's praying with, let's say, an izar, which is something like a cloth that you wrap around your waist, and it dangles down and it drapes down. So let's say the brother's praying with the izar, but somehow, some way, when he was like moving through sujood or sitting, some of his awrah became exposed because of his movement. His prayer would be invalidated. So here the rule for this is, if the awrah became exposed through the movement of the one who is praying, like going from ruku' to straightening up, or going from standing to sujood, or going from sujood to sitting, while the movements were being done, the one who is praying, his awrah becomes shown. So when that happens, since it happened through his action, even though like he didn't mean to, it was an accident, but his prayer is invalidated because it happened through his action. Now let's say if they were not, it was not through their action, rather they were praying outside or they were praying inside, but they had the windows open, and all of a sudden a gust of wind came in and it blew up the izar, in the case of the man, or the dress of the woman, or like it blew off her hijab, like a part of her, let's say her head became exposed. If she covers it right away and immediately, then the prayer is not invalidated. So the difference in this case is that it doesn't happen by the action of the person who is praying themselves. It happened through an external factor that they could not control. So in this case, if they cover it immediately, the prayer is still intact. And if it happened without their action and they cover it immediately, the prayer is still intact. But if it happened without their action and they were not able to cover it right away, the prayer is invalid. Changing one's intention while praying, that is, to intend to stop one's prayer, immediately invalidates the prayer. Also, the prayer is invalidated if one makes stopping the prayer contingent upon the happening of an event. So if while praying one thinks if a particular matter occurs, one will stop one's prayer, the prayer is immediately invalidated. So here, because it is necessary for the continuation of the prayer, for the prayer, once the person enters it, for the prayer to remain intact, they have to have the firm intention that they're praying. So if at any point in time they waver in that, even a little bit, they say to themselves, I would interrupt the prayer, or I will interrupt the prayer, etc. In that case, their prayer becomes invalidated right away. If they said, for example, to themselves, if someone knocks on the door, I'm going to stop my prayer and answer the door. The moment that becomes their thought, and the moment that they themselves actively think that, intend that, immediately the prayer is invalidated, even if nobody ever knocks on the door. That's what he said there. For example, if he was praying and there was, okay, this is another example. For example, if one was praying and there was thunder, and while praying he intends that if it gets closer he will stop his prayer, then immediately his prayer is invalidated. Likewise, it is invalidated if he hesitates whether to stop it or not, but this does not include the mere thought which he rejects, which does not affect the prayer. This is why we said, and it becomes his thought, it said he actually thinks it, because we want to exclude what's called in Arabic the khatir, which is the involuntary thought. What's the involuntary thought? It is when something enters your heart without your will. And this happens often to the human being. Isn't it the case, or what some people call intrusive thoughts? Sometimes a person will be, let's say, standing on the balcony enjoying the view, and they'll get an intrusive thought of jumping over, or throwing a cup over, or something like that. That's not, the person doesn't really want to do that, but they get that intrusive thought. Yani it comes to their heart without their control. It comes to their heart without their control. So if it comes into someone's heart without their control, that if someone knocks on the door, they're going to invalidate the prayer, that's not their thought. So their prayer would not be invalidated. Because once that involuntary thought happens, what does the person want to do? He rejects it. The author said, deviating from the direction of the qibla by not facing it, what does it oneself or someone else pushes him away from the qibla, invalidates the prayer. There are exceptions mentioned in their particular sections. Yani, if someone, let's say, was praying in a place, nobody, let's say, you're passing through a town, you're traveling, you get off on the exit, you go to this place to pray, nobody knows you there. And unfortunately, here in North America, there is the calamity of having to deal with centers, so-called Islamic centers, that they're facing northeast, which is not the direction of Mecca. It might be a route that planes take in order to reach Mecca, but it's not a constant bearing. It is not a singular direction which if you took that path without deviating, you would arrive at Mecca. It wouldn't happen. If you go northeast and you stay northeast and you never change, you will never hit Mecca. But anyways, so this is a calamity that is occurring in the West. And so, you go to a place, you've never been there before, you don't know what their situation is, so you check the qibla, as religiously is your duty. And because among the conditions of the prayer is to face the qibla. How are you going to face that you're passing through because you're a traveler, and it's not like you're going in there to tear the house down or anything like that. You just want to pray and get on back on the road. You have your family with you. You know, you're not trying to antagonize anyone. You just want to pray. So you're praying in the right direction, but someone there, and he comes while you're praying, and they might think, oh, this person is mistakenly facing east and they should be facing northeast. That's their ignorant thinking. So they stand behind the person and they move their chest. So they grab them by the shoulders and they move them and push them towards the supposed qibla that they have. So if that happens, if the person does it, and the person then he turns them away from the qibla that they're praying in, the proper qibla, then their prayer is invalidated. So if someone comes behind you and you're praying in the right direction, and which is east, not northeast, and someone tries to change your direction, hold firm. Hold firm. Don't let them move you. Resist. Because if they move you, it invalidates the prayer. The author said, among the invalidators of the prayer is eating and drinking intentionally during the prayer, even if the food or the drink was a little amount, and even if the food was something that existed in between one's teeth during the prayer. If, however, one forgot he was praying, and this is why he ate or drank while praying, and it was a little, this does not invalidate the prayer, except if he ate or drank a lot. So, what does that mean? That means that if the person, let's say, they had some food residue in their mouth, even if it wasn't like an actual piece of food stuck in their teeth, but they had some food coloring still mixed with their saliva, or some particles of the food, then what happens? If the person swallows that intentionally while praying, then his prayer is invalidated. Because here the similar rule applies to fasting, like the same thing for fasting. If during the day of Ramadan, you have, let's say, some food residue, or you don't have the pure saliva in your mouth, you have it mixed with something that's a pure substance, for example, and you swallow it on purpose, with your own will, not like accidental, not like involuntary, then in this case the person's fasting is invalid. And similar to fasting, if the person eats while forgetting in the prayer, his prayer is not invalidated because he forgot that he's praying. The difference between them is that in fasting, if the person eats a whole pot of food while forgetting that he's fasting, his fasting is still valid. Because in the case of the fasting, as long as he's not remembering, even if it's a lot, his fasting is still valid. But for the prayer, if he eats a lot, even though he's forgetting, his prayer is invalid. But if the person even swallows a sesame seed on purpose while praying, while remembering that he's praying, then in that case his prayer is invalid. Also, laughing intentionally along with pronouncing letters, even if one letter that has a meaning or two letters, whether they have a meaning or not, invalidates the prayer. If one laughed unintentionally and while laughing he pronounced letters, in this case his prayer is not invalidated. He is able to control it. Sometimes a person is able to control their laughter. They don't have to laugh, subhanAllah. And as long as the person is able to control their laughter, they should, in most cases. Laughing, like let's say with a voice and with a sound, is disliked. And laughing a lot, outside of the prayer, is something that hardens the heart. So the person should his heart should be more in tune with the reality of what they're going to face sooner or later, which is death and the grave and judgment day. So the person, he shouldn't laugh unnecessarily. But if the person laughs without being able to control it, yani he's overwhelmed with laughter, then in this case, it's not dispraised because he can't control it. Secondly, if it happens while he's praying, it does not invalidate the prayer. If one laughed unintentionally and while laughing he pronounced letters, in this case his prayer is not invalidated because the pronunciation of those letters was not intentional, except if the sum of those letters is considered a lot, that is, it exceeds 6 statements, then his prayer is invalidated. The author said, committing apostasy while praying invalidates the prayer immediately, even if one says the shahada right after. For example, if someone was praying, and while praying he committed blasphemy, wal-'iyadhu billah, we seek refuge with Allah from that, his prayer is invalidated immediately, even if he says the shahada right away. As it is known, there are 3 different types of apostasy. Apostasy by the heart, meaning for one to hold a blasphemous conviction in the heart, such as to doubt about the existence of Allah in one's heart, or to doubt about the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ, or for one to believe that this world is eternal, or to believe that Allah has bodily attributes. Some people believe that Allah is a huge body sitting on the arsh, the throne. This belief is blasphemy, even if they do not say it, but they believe it. Footnote 238, by having this belief, they contradicted the Quran and likened God to His creation. Again, if you have the hard copy, change it from resembled to likened. Because apparently it resembled is the type of verb that is intransitive. It doesn't take a direct object. So it changes the meaning to a blasphemous meaning. If someone says so-and-so resembled God, then it's as if he's saying that he has a similarity to Allah. Not like that. Not لأنه ليس فعلا يقع على مفعول به في الإنجليزية. هو فعل لازم. Yeah, liken يعني له مفعول به. No. Yeah, non-resemblance, yani Allah is attributed with non-resemblance to the creation. But you can't say, for example, so-and-so resembled God to His creations. Because it'll be like saying so-and-so resembles God. That he himself resembles God, not that he's saying that Allah is similar to someone else. Yeah, we're talking about the direct object. That he likened Allah to the creations. You see how that one makes sense? He drew similarity between Allah and the creations. You can't give that meaning with resembled. Because resembled is intransitive. It sticks to the doer, if you will. This belief is blasphemy even if they do not say it, but they believe it. And if someone believes that Allah is a huge body sitting on the throne, then he is not a Muslim. He can never be a Muslim with that creed, because that contradicts the creed of Islam. Because in reality, he would not be worshipping Allah. If he's worshipping something that he says sits, then he's not worshipping Allah, he's worshipping a creation. The second type of apostasy is by action, such as to prostrate to the sun or the moon, or to throw the book of the Quran in the trash, while knowing that it's the Quran. This type occurs by the organs. The third type is apostasy by the tongue, such as to cuss Allah or the Prophet ﷺ, or to claim that Allah is not just, or to slander the religion of Islam, or to say that even one thing occurs in this world without the will of Allah, All these are examples of blasphemy committed by the tongue. And there are like countless examples, more examples than we can count. And by that, we have finished the chapter of the Invalidators. Are there any questions about what we mentioned so far before moving on to the new chapter, details about the prayers? Type it in the chat. طيب. The author said, details about the prayers. There are 17 obligatory rak'ah. Within them are 34 prostrations, 94 takbirah, 9 tashahhud, 10 salam, and 153 sayings of Subhanallah. The sum of the integrals of the prayer is 126. There are 36 integrals in Subuh prayer, 42 in Maghrib prayer, and 54 in the 4 rak'ah prayers. Whoever is unable to stand in the obligatory prayer, prays while sitting, and whoever is unable to sit, prays while lying on his side. The number of rak'ah of the obligatory prayers is 17. Footnote 239. As for the traveler, there are 11 rak'ah. However, the one who is traveling is not obligated to combine the prayers nor to shorten them. This means each day and night, and this is counting that the person on Friday is going to pray dhuhr. If on Friday one prays the Jumu'ah prayer, then the sum or the rak'ah would be 15 and not 17. This is also if the person is not shortening the prayers. Those 17 rak'ah contain 34 prostrations. Footnote 240, with the 5 obligatory prayers, there are 34 prostrations, 4 for the Fajr prayer, 8 for the Dhuhr prayer, 8 for the Asr prayer, 6 for the Maghrib prayer, and 8 for the Isha prayer. 94 takbirah, footnote 241. In every rak'ah there are 5 takbirah. First takbirah is after reciting the Fatiha, and takbirah means saying Allahu Akbar. First takbirah is after reciting the Fatiha while going to the bowing position. Second takbirah while going down to the first prostration. Third takbirah while lifting from the first prostration. Fourth takbirah while going down to the second prostration. And the fifth takbirah while lifting from the second prostration. So if one multiplies 5 times 17 rak'ah, it equals 85 takbirah. One would add another 5 takbirah, which are obligatory for the ihram at the beginning of the prayer, and this makes the total equal 90 takbirah. In addition, there are 4 prayers that have the first tashahhud in them: Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. And while getting up to stand the Fatiha, and while getting up to stand to recite the Fatiha of the third rak'ah, one says Allahu Akbar. So by adding these 4 to the 90, the total is 94 takbirah. 5 of the takbirah are obligatory, and the remaining 90 are hayat, yani the form of the prayer. 94 takbirah, 9 times of saying the tashahhud. 242, 9 tashahhud, 1 is for the Fajr prayer, and 2 for each of the 4 prayers. This makes the total 9. Again, 5 among those are obligatory ones, and 4 are sunnah. 10 times saying the taslim, and 153 times saying tasbih. The sum of the integrals of the prayer is 126 integrals. There are 30 integrals in Subuh prayer, 42 in Maghrib prayer, and 54 in the 4 rak'ah prayers. This is without counting following the order, because it is not an independent action, and without counting the intention of ending the prayer, which is a weak saying. The person who is not able to pray while standing up, prays while sitting. Footnote 246. Here there are 3 cases. One is unable to stand at all, so one prays while sitting. One was able to stand when praying, but while standing, something happened preventing one from continuing to stand. In this case, one does what one is able to do. For example, one can sit and continue with the prayer while sitting. Number 3, one is only able to stand at the beginning of the prayer and is unable to stand for the subsequent rak'ah, or one is able to stand only at the beginning of the prayer and only for a short period. In both situations, one can sit after standing and continue the rest of the prayer while sitting. Important note, in this third case, one cannot begin the prayer while sitting because he was able to stand at the beginning. So those people that pray while sitting down on chairs, they need to be cautious that they are doing it right. And that can only happen with the knowledge. So if one faces a big hardship, if one stands up for the prayer, even if one does not have a handicap, and even if one can stand up, but by standing he would face a lot of pain, to the point that he cannot feel khushu' in his heart while praying, then he is excused and can pray while sitting. There is no specific type of sitting to perform the integral. Any type of sitting is valid, but sitting in the way of iftirash is better. That is to sit on one's left foot and to lift the right foot while the inner part of one's toes are on the ground. This type of sitting is specific for the prayer. People do not usually sit this way in other than the prayer. If the person is able to stand up for a part of reciting Al-Fatiha, but then not anymore, in this case one starts by standing up, and then when one feels that one is no longer able, one sits. Also, if one is praying while sitting, but then feels that now one is able to stand up, one stands up to continue reciting. The judgment is based on the ability. If the person really is unable to stand, then he can sit. Then he says, the one who is not able to sit prays while lying on one side. So let's look at the footnote here, 247. The one who is unable to sit can lie down. Here, the meaning of unable is the same hardship as described above. As per the hadith that was related by Imran ibn Husayn, that the Prophet ﷺ told him, if you are unable to stand, you may sit, and if you are unable to sit, you may lie down. The scholars said it is preferred to lie down on one's right side, and one directs oneself towards the Qibla. And if while one is lying down, one is able without a hardship to sit for the ruku' or sujood, then one sits for them. If one is unable to lie on one side, oh wait, I skipped something. The scholars said it is preferred to lie down on one's right side and one directs oneself towards the Qibla. And if while one is lying down, one is able without a hardship to sit for the ruku' or sujood, then one sits for them. If one is unable to lie on one side, one can lie on one's back. One would face the Qibla with one's face if one is able, by placing a pillow or the like under one's head, so that the face and a part of one's upper chest also faces the Qibla. And if one is unable to place something under one's head, then one would have one's feet face the Qibla. If while lying down, one is unable to sit but is able without a hardship to raise one's head for the ruku' or sujood, then one raises one's head for them and raises it more for the sujood. If one is unable to raise one's head, then one can use one's eyelids for the ruku' and sujood. In this case, one would not close one's eyelid for the ruku', and one would lower one's eyelids more for the sujood. If one is able to move one's eyelids, then one would pray by imagining doing the integrals of action, and one would say the verbal integrals as normal. If one is unable to say the 5 verbal integrals, one does the verbal integrals and the integrals of actions by imagining doing them in one's heart. That was a long one. The author said, the one who is not able to sit prays while lying on one side. One lies on one's right or left side, but lying on one's left side without an excuse is disliked. One lies in a way that one's chest would be facing the Qibla. If one is not able to pray while lying on one side, one lies on one's back while directing the soles of one's feet towards the Qibla. Also, one would put something to raise one's head, so that one would not be facing the sky. This is if one can. If the person is not able to make ruku' or sujood, one bends one's head for that, while considering in one's heart that this takes place for ruku' and that bending takes place for sujood. So there are cases where the person, let's say, he's able to stand, or he's able to, let's say, have whatever format, but he's not able to make ruku', so he does what he can. In regards to the optional sunnah prayer, it is permissible for one to pray while sitting, even if one is able to stand up. However, one's reward is half of the reward of the one who prays while standing up. So what does that mean? That for the sunnah prayer, if the Muslim wants to, he can do the sunnah prayer sitting down. So let's say that the Muslim, he was very tired, but he did not want that to stop him from fulfilling the sunnah, so he can pray it while sitting down. But if he does do that while sitting down, he would get, while being able to stand, he would get half the reward that he would get for praying the sunnah prayer standing. And we'll stop here for today. We'll start with the next chapter next week, inshallah, which is if a matter is left out from the prayer. So alhamdulillah, we covered some good distance. We covered from the Invalidators, which is from page 166 to 174. So, are there any questions? If so, type them in the chat.
I have a question.
Yes, Hajj.
If someone is laying down on the back and he cannot say the verb integral, like the Fatiha, is possible?
If he is lying on his back, but he cannot say the verbal integrals, يجريها في قلبه. No. If someone's not able to say the verbal integrals, he imagines it in his heart, that he's doing it in his heart. Any questions over there? طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.